Captain Elias Drake had already tied the anchor chain around his waist when the woman with iron shackles around her wrists stumbled out of the fog. The chain, 40 pounds of rusted links once meant to hold a frigate against Atlantic gales, now pressed cold iron against the bare skin of his throat, the final knot cinched so tight his pulse throbbed against every link. One step backward, one lean over the rail, and the sea would finish what 12 years of guilt had started. Then the fog breathed her onto his deck. She ran barefoot across salt-slick planks, wrists bound by manacles that glinted dull orange in the lantern glow, chain between them clinking like funeral bells. Her dress, once calico now torn to ribbons, clung to her legs soaked with seawater and something darker. Blood maybe. Or brine. Or both. Elias's fingers froze on the final knot. He hadn't heard another human voice in 3 months, not since he'd paid the last dockhand to sail his schooner 3 miles offshore and abandon him. No provisions. No oars. Just the chain, the revolver with its 5 spent shells, and the promise that the 6th would never be needed. The woman staggered to a halt 3 paces from him, chest heaving, eyes wide and wild. A welt bloomed across her left cheekbone, purple against pale skin, and a thin line of blood traced the corner of her mouth. Behind her, the fog swirled like smoke from a dying fire. "Help!" she rasped, voice raw as sea glass. "They're coming." Elias didn't move. Couldn't. The chain around his neck felt heavier than the anchor itself. She lifted her shackled wrists, the chain between them rattling like bones. "Cut me loose. Please." The word please cracked something inside him he'd thought calcified years ago. He glanced over her shoulder. Nothing but gray nothingness out there, except the lantern on the mainmast caught a flicker of movement. A light. 3 fast blinks. Then darkness again. Smuggler code. Target acquired. His heartbeat matched the rhythm. Thump thump thump. The woman followed his gaze, shivered despite the humid air. "They'll kill me when they find me." She paused, swallowed. "They'll kill you for seeing me." Elias's hand drifted to the revolver tucked in his belt. 5 notches carved into the walnut grip. 1 blank space left. He'd sworn the 6th bullet was for the man who'd cost him everything, himself. Now a stranger might steal that promise. Foghorn lowed somewhere beyond the reef, mournful as a dying whale. The woman took another step, chains dragging across the deck. Close enough now he could smell her, salt, sweat, fear. "Name?" he asked, voice rusty from disuse. "Sarah." The world tilted. Not like Sarah. Not reminding him of Sarah. Just Sarah. His wife's name on another woman's lips. 12 years ago, Sarah Drake had stood on this very deck, waving goodbye as Elias sailed off to hunt privateers. 2 months later he'd returned to find their cottage ashes, Sarah gone, and a note nailed to the charred doorframe: "Payment for your sins." He'd spent every sunrise since loading that 6th bullet and every sunset unable to pull the trigger. Now the name came floating back on fog in desperation. The woman, Sarah misread his silence. "I didn't steal the name," she said quickly. "It's mine. My mother gave it to me the night before." A splash cut her off. Not wind. Not wave. The sound of oars slicing water. Voices, low and urgent, carried across the gap between ships. They were close. Elias's fingers found the knot at his throat, fumbled with it. The chain clinked, iron kissing iron. Sarah's eyes flicked to the revolver, then to the chain, then to the black water below. Understanding dawned. "You were leaving," she whispered. He agreed. Another splash. Closer. Lantern light bobbed through the fog like a corpse candle. She lifted her shackles higher. "Then cut me loose and go. I won't stop you." The weight of the chain pressed against his windpipe. Elias drew the revolver, thumb brushing the empty 6th chamber. "Can't," he said. "Not won't. Can't." Because the woman bleeding on his deck wore his wife's name, carried the same bruises Sarah had worn the night she disappeared, and somewhere beyond the fog, the men who'd shackled her were rowing closer with every heartbeat. He had a choice. Step backward into the sea and let the chain finish its work. Or cut her free, load the 6th bullet, and find out why the universe had sent Sarah Drake back from the dead. The lantern blinked again, 2 short, 1 long. Boarding signal. 30 seconds, maybe less. Elias raised the revolver, not at her, but past her shoulder toward the darkness beyond. "Stay behind me," he said. And for the first time in 12 years, the chain around his neck felt less like a noose and more like a lifeline. Elias knelt, knife poised above Sarah's shackles. When the lantern guttered, oil running low, time running lower, the blade trembled. Not from fear of smugglers, but from the sudden bloom of memory 12 years buried. Same deck. Same salt sting. Sarah, his Sarah, had stood here barefoot, laughing at the cold, daring him to chase her across the wet planks. He'd caught her, spun her, kissed the freckles on her collarbone while the crew pretended not to watch. That night they'd toasted stars and future children. 48 hours later he'd sailed after a rumored privateer gold convoy. He'd come back richer in coin, poorer by everything else. The memory tasted like copper. He tasted it now. A drop of seawater slid from Sarah's hair onto the iron cuff and hissed, sizzled, like hot iron in a forge. The map appeared. Ink the color of dried blood rose along her wrist, delicate lines forming coastlines, reefs, a skull-shaped cove he recognized as Dead Man's Hollow. A child's scrawl beside it, asterisk 30 souls. Deliver or die. Asterisk. Sarah saw his eyes widen. They branded me, she whispered. Cargo and navigator both. Another droplet, another line, this one leading straight to the faint scar on his own forearm where a saber had split skin years ago. The scar Sarah had kissed every night until the day she vanished. Lantern oil now a finger's breadth from gone. Shadows crept across the deck like spilled ink. From the fog came voices, closer, conversational, men discussing who'd get first turn at the woman, who'd keep the captain's boots. Businesslike. Port. Elias's thumb found the sixth chamber of the revolver. Empty. He'd promised himself that last bullet was for the man who'd failed Sarah, himself. Sarah's chains clinked softly as she shifted. You can still jump, she said. Chains long enough to drag you under fast. They won't find you. They'll find me. Her voice cracked on me but her chin stayed high. He pictured the deck tilting, weight of iron around his throat, the cold shock of water. End of story. End of guilt. Then he pictured Sarah dragged below deck, branded again, map flayed from her skin inch by inch. Choice, A, cut his own chain, slide into the sea, silence forever. B, cut hers, load the empty chamber with whatever hope remained and fight. Lantern sputtered. Flame shrinking to a blue seed. Elias slid the knife under the shackle hinge. Once I open this, he muttered, there's no going back. Sarah's eyes, gray as storm water, locked on his. There never was. He pressed. Metal groaned. The shackle cracked open like a broken jaw. Click. Sound ricocheted across the deck. Voices in the fog stopped. Oars lifted, water dripping like slow applause. Sarah flexed her freed wrist, veins pulsing beneath the raw map. They'll come fast now. Elias rose, knife dripping rust and seawater. He flipped the revolver open, spun the cylinder. Empty. Useless, except. He pressed the knife's tip to his forearm, reopened the old scar. Blood welled, dark and thick. One quick swipe across the blade's edge, a single droplet clinging to steel. With his thumb he smeared the blood into the revolver's empty chamber, sealing it like wax. Sarah stared. What are you doing? Loading the last bullet, he said. Different kind. Lantern died. Deck plunged into starlight and shadow. Shapes materialized out of the dark. 6 men in a skiff, scarred faces painted white for night work. The lead oarsman grinned, teeth like broken coral. Evening, Captain. Heard you was expecting company. Elias stepped in front of Sarah, revolver raised, one shot of blood and iron ready. Evening, boys, he said. You're right on time. Behind him, Sarah lifted the broken shackle like a knuckle duster, map glowing faintly where seawater and blood mixed. .2 against 6. Odds he'd faced before, and lost, but never with Sarah at his back. He cocked the hammer. Somewhere in the darkness the tide rose another inch, countdown still ticking. Choose, the sea seemed to whisper. Cut the chain or cut the throat. Elias smiled, first time in 12 years. Let's find out which one's mine. The lantern gave one last sputter and died, but the darkness did not fall. It rose. It rose from the water in cold, rolling sheets, swallowing mast and moon alike, until Elias could no longer tell sea from sky. Only the sound of oars slicing the black gave direction. 1 stroke. 2. 3. Measured, patient, coming closer with every heartbeat. Elias thumbed the revolver's hammer back. The single blood-loaded chamber felt heavier than lead. Beside him Sarah crouched, broken shackle clenched like a knuckle duster. The sea chart on her wrist glowing faint lines where salt and blood mixed. 30 souls, the ink read. Deliver or die. How many? She breathed. 6 in the skiff, Elias answered. 2 more on the sloop's bowsprit. Maybe a rifle. His voice was calm, the way a man speaks when he has already decided which memories deserve to die with him. Stroke 4. Stroke 5. A child's rag doll floated past the rail, button eyes, yellow yarn hair, tiny dress stitched from flour sack cloth. Elias's stomach lurched. It was the same doll Sarah had been sewing the morning he'd sailed for the gold convoy. He had mocked the crooked smile. She had laughed and said, "It's for the daughter we'll have when you come home rich." The doll bobbed once, snagged on a trailing rope, then vanished under the hull. Stroke 6. From the fog came a whisper, "Captain Drake. Still breathing, I see." The voice was silk over iron. Harker, the smuggler who had once been Elias's quartermaster. The man who'd sold their course to the privateers for 30 pieces of silver and a bottle of rum. Elias raised the revolver toward the sound. "Step into the light and find out." A low chuckle. "Light's gone, old friend. Only the dark left." Sarah shifted, bare feet silent on the deck. She pressed her lips to Elias's ear. "They want the map alive. Me breathing. You dead. Gives us leverage." Leverage. 1 bullet. 6 killers. Math that didn't balance. Stroke 7. Something metallic scraped the starboard hull, grappling hooks biting wood. Elias spun, fired without aiming. The blood-charged round struck sparks off iron, a useless star in the void. A second hook clanged to port. The sloop lurched as weight transferred, men climbing. Sarah tugged his sleeve. "Rigging." She pointed up. Elias followed her gaze. The mainsail boom still hung loose, canvas flapping like a wounded gull. A plan sparked, unlikely, ugly but alive. He shoved the revolver into her hand. 1 shot left. Make it count. Then he lunged for the boom's line, slashing the cleat with his knife. Canvas thundered downward, heavy with fog and dew. 2 shapes on the rail shouted, lost footing, plunged into the sea with choking cries. Stroke 8. Harker's voice sharpened. "Enough games. Bring the woman. Burn the rest." Torches flared, 3 of them, orange eyes opening in the dark. Fire reflected off cutlasses, off the brass buttons of a child's coat worn by a man too large for it. The coat had belonged to Elias's cabin boy Tommy, 12 years old when the privateers took him. Elias's chest constricted. Every torch was a memory burning. Sarah stepped forward, shackled wrist raised like a banner. "You want the map?" Her voice carried, steady despite the tremor in her knees. "Trade for it." Silence. Then boots on deck. Harker emerged first, tall, lean, beard braided with silver rings. Behind him, 2 riflemen leveled flintlocks. "Trade what?" Harker asked, eyes glittering. Sarah lifted the revolver, barrel kissing her own temple. "My life or your map. Choose fast." Micro-reversal. The rifleman hesitated. Harker's smile faltered. Elias used the heartbeat to slide behind the fallen sail, knife between teeth. Stroke 9. Harker took 1 cautious step. "Put it down, girl. You're worth more breathing." Sarah's thumb tightened. "But not to me." Elias counted heartbeats, 3, 4, then exploded from cover. He crashed into the nearest rifleman, knife finding the soft hollow below ribs. The second rifle fired. Lead whined past Elias's ear and buried into the mast. Sarah spun, revolver cracking. The blood round took the second rifleman in the shoulder. He screamed, weapon clattering. Stroke 10. Harker lunged. Elias met him mid-deck, knife against cutlass. Steel rang. Sparks flew. Harker snarled, pressing down with superior reach. Elias felt his boots skid on wet planks, inching toward the rail and the hungry black below. Sarah darted in, swinging the broken shackle like a flail. It caught Harker across the temple. He staggered. Elias drove forward, blade slicing coat and skin. Blood hissed onto deck. But the torchbearers were circling now, 3 men, fire licking closer. Canvas caught, flame raced up the sail like a living thing. Smoke twisted into lungs. Stroke 11. The sloop groaned, timber stressed. Salt-soaked rope began to pop. Elias realized the fight had severed the forward anchor line. The ship was drifting, toward shoals or open sea, impossible to tell in the dark. Harker wiped blood from his eye, grinned savage. "You always did burn your own bridges, Captain?" Elias glanced at Sarah. Her eyes held the same question he'd seen the night he'd left her mother. "Will you run again?" Stroke 12. The skiff bumped the hull. 2 more men vaulted aboard, cutlasses raised. Sarah lifted the revolver, empty now, but the gesture froze them a heartbeat. Elias seized the moment, grabbed her wrist and ran. They sprinted across burning deck toward the stern, smoke clawing their lungs, heat blistering skin. Behind them, Harker roared orders. Ahead, only the rail and the black Atlantic beyond. No escape. No time. Elias spun, knife ready, heart hammering. Sarah pressed her back to his. Firelight painted them in shifting gold and crimson. 6 men closed in. Stroke 13. Somewhere below deck, a child cried, soft, muffled, terrified. The sound cut through chaos like a blade. Elias's blood turned to ice. Another doll? Harker stepped into the ring of firelight, cutlass raised. Last chance, Captain. The woman. The map. Or we start carving pieces off whatever's making that noise. Stroke 14. Elias met Sarah's eyes. 1 heartbeat. 2. The revolver clicked empty. The torch flames leaned toward them. Somewhere in the dark, the tide shifted, an audible suck and surge against the hull. Choice crystallized: fight, flee, or bargain with the only coin left, their lives. The oars stopped. Silence fell so complete Elias could hear his own pulse counting down the final seconds. Then from the fog a single voice, childlike, desperate, called a name. Not Elias. Not Sarah. But the name carved into the blank notch of the revolver. The world narrowed to that word, that sound, that impossible echo. And the trigger, half-pulled, trembling, waited to decide everything. 3 minutes. Lantern oil had bled out hours ago, but the fire climbing the mainsail gave enough light to count every heartbeat. Orange tongues licked across canvas, turning fog into a glowing lung that breathed heat and ash across the deck. Elias's shadow writhed on the boards like a man already hanging from the yardarm. 2 minutes 43 seconds. Harker's blade rested against the throat of the boy, 9 years old, barefoot, wrists raw from rope. The child's eyes were wide, but not with terror. They were wide with recognition. Recognition of Elias. Recognition of the revolver trembling in Elias's right hand. 2 minutes 31 seconds. Look at him, Captain, Harker crooned, cutlass kissing skin hard enough to bead blood. Same widow's peak. Same stubborn chin. Takes after the mother, don't he? The boy flinched at the name. Mama said you'd come. Elias's world shrank to that single sentence. The salt taste in his mouth turned metallic. Somewhere behind him Sarah's breathing hitched, she saw it too. The blood map tattoo on her wrist flared crimson under torchlight, the coastline morphing into a child's silhouette, tiny initials scrawled beneath, T.D. Thomas Drake. 2 minutes 15 seconds. Memory detonated. A crib rocking in candlelight. A lullaby Elias never finished humming. Sarah's belly round with promise, the morning he'd sailed after gold that glittered like fool's stars, that he'd come home to ashes and silence. Not silence. Screams he'd never heard, screams that had lived in his skull for 12 years. 2 minutes 2 seconds. Lower the gun, Harker said, or he learns how steel sings. Elias's knuckles whitened on the grip. 5 notches on the walnut. 1 blank space. 1 bullet left. Sarah's voice cracked behind him. Shoot, Elias. End it. But the boy's eyes, Sarah's eyes, pleaded louder. 1 minute 48 seconds. The deck tilted as fire ate through rigging. A flaming spar crashed, scattering sparks across the boards. Heat peeled paint, singed hair. Somewhere below, barrels of black powder waited like sleeping dragons. Smugglers tightened their circle. 6 blades, 6 grins, 6 exits blocked. Harker shifted, revealing a second hostage. A girl, 6 maybe 7, clutching the rag doll Elias had seen floating earlier. 2 children. 2 triggers. 1 bullet. 1 minute 33 seconds. Choose, Harker hissed. Son or daughter? Mercy or memory? The word daughter punched the air from Elias's lungs. Twins. Sarah had birthed twins the night the privateers came. He'd never known. The revolver felt suddenly alive, pulse matching his. Sarah stepped closer, chains clinking. The map leads to the powder hold. We blow them all or we lose them all. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook with the same tremor Sarah Drake had shown the night she'd begged him not to sail. 1 minute 17 seconds. Elias's gaze flicked to the boy, Thomas, small chin lifted in defiance. To the girl, Hope, tears cutting clean tracks through soot. 5 notches for 5 lives he'd failed to save. The blank notch for the life he'd never met. He thumbed the hammer back. Click. The sound froze every blade. Click again, empty yet louder than cannon fire. 1 minute 3 seconds. Harker laughed. 1 bullet, Captain. 1 choice. Elias lifted the revolver, barrel steady now. Not at Harker. Not at the children. At the flaming mainsail above their heads. The burning canvas dripped molten tar. 1 shot through the heart of the fire, sparks into powder, ship into sun. 48 seconds. Comment now, Elias whispered to the dark beyond the deck. Save the twins or sink the devils? His finger tightened. 47.46. Thomas's voice, small, fierce, cut through the countdown. Papa, the locket. Elias's free hand brushed his pocket. The gold locket he'd found in the powder hold, engraved crown, unknown queen. Inside, a miniature portrait. Not a queen. A child. His child. Both children. Two faces in one frame. 39 seconds. Understanding detonated. The locket was key. Not to gold. To a hidden compartment beneath the powder barrels. A boat oiled and ready. A father's last gift carved in secret. But the fuse of the sail dripped closer. 33 seconds. Harker's blade pressed. A bead of blood rolled down Thomas's throat, red as sunrise. Sarah's chains rattled as she lunged, shoulder-checking a smuggler, snatching his cutlass. Chaos flared, steel on steel, fire on wood, time on heartbeat. 27 seconds. Elias pivoted, revolver tracking Harker's wrist. Not to kill. To maim. One bullet through the hand that held the blade. But the boy was in the way, always in the way. 21 seconds. The flaming spar cracked. Thunder in the rigging, plummeted. Sparks showered the deck, kissing the trail of gunpowder Sarah had poured when no one watched. A serpent of fire raced toward the hold. 15 seconds. Harker's eyes widened. He saw the fuse. He saw the locket in Elias's hand. He saw the map on Sarah's wrist now glowing like a brand. Cut me loose and we all live, Elias said, voice low, or burn together. 10 seconds. Harker hesitated. Prophet warred with panic. The boy squirmed. The girl sobbed. Sarah's cutlass hovered. Elias's finger tightened on the trigger. 9.8.7. The fire serpent reached the hatch. 6 seconds. Thomas looked up, met Elias's eyes and smiled, the same crooked smile Sarah had worn the day she'd said come home rich or come home breathing, just come home. 5.4.3. Elias shifted aim, 2. Toward the fuse, 1. And the world balanced on the breath before the click. The hammer fell. The blood-wet round kissed the powder fuse. Flame leapt into the serpent's mouth, one heartbeat of silence, then the night tore open. The deck erupted beneath their feet. A blossom of orange and white hurled men skyward like broken dolls. Elias felt the blast lift him, felt Sarah's hand ripped from his, felt the anchor chain still looped around his throat snap taut against the rail. For one weightless instant he saw everything. Thomas clutching the rag doll, hope shielding her eyes, Harker's silhouette silhouetted in fire, mouth open in a scream he'd never finish. Then gravity returned. Wood splintered. Smoke rolled. Elias crashed to the deck, chain coiling like a dying snake. The world rang with a single high-pitched whine. Eardrums stunned, heart stunned, 12 years of guilt suddenly weightless. Through the smoke Sarah crawled, face streaked with soot and tears, dragging both children by the wrists. The shackles were gone, cut by flying shrapnel or by the same blade that had freed her minutes earlier. Thomas's eyes were wide but unharmed, doll clenched to his chest like a talisman. Hope's small fingers were locked in Sarah's belt. Move. Sarah's voice cut through the whine. Boats aft. Elias staggered upright, lungs scorched, revolver lost somewhere in the chaos. The sloop was dying fast, flames racing up the mizzen, spars collapsing like burned bones. Around them, smugglers screamed, staggered, or simply vanished into the inferno. Harker lay pinned beneath a fallen spar, eyes fixed on Elias, mouth working soundlessly. Elias hesitated only a second. He knelt, pressed 2 fingers to Harker's throat, pulse fluttering, fading. You sold my crew, he said. Sold my wife. But you didn't sell my children. He slipped the gold locket from his pocket, the one Thomas had named, and pressed it into Harker's palm. Tell the devil the debt's paid. Then he ran. The longboat hung half-swamped, but the hidden compartment beneath the thwarts was intact. Oiled canvas, fresh water, a tiny sail. Sarah shoved the children in first, then turned to Elias. The chain around his neck still glinted, iron against skin. Cut it, she said. He lifted the knife. For a moment the link seemed alive, memories coiled in every rusted ridge. He saw Sarah Drake laughing on this same deck 12 years ago. He saw the empty crib. He saw 5 notches on a revolver grip and one blank space that would never be filled. The blade flashed. The chain parted with a sound like a sigh. They shoved off as the sloop folded in on itself, masts toppling in slow motion, firelight painting the sea blood red. Oars bit water. Smoke rolled over them, then thinned, revealing stars. Cold air tasted of salt and ash and something else, something clean. Behind them, the sloop hissed beneath the waves. The ocean closed like a book. Silence. Only the creak of oars and the soft hiccup of hope crying into Sarah's shoulder. Elias rowed until his arms burned, until the stars wheeled overhead and the fire became a distant ember on the horizon. Thomas leaned forward. Papa? The word was tentative, as if testing whether the world would allow it. Elias's throat closed. He managed a nod. I'm here. Sarah reached across, touched the scar on his forearm where the chain had been. You came home breathing, she whispered. That's all she ever asked. Dawn found them drifting beneath a rose-gold sky. The longboat bobbed on gentle swells, sail rigged to catch a westerly breeze. Thomas and Hope slept curled together like kittens. Sarah sat at the bow, face lifted to the wind. Elias opened the locket. Inside, beneath the tiny portraits of two children he'd never known, lay a folded scrap of parchment no larger than a thumbnail. He unfolded it with trembling fingers. Coordinates. A skull-shaped island. 3 words inked in a child's scrawl. Come find us. Sarah looked over his shoulder. Another rescue? Elias smiled, the first real smile in 12 years. One island at a time. He raised the broken revolver, now empty, and pressed the barrel to his lips in a silent toast. Then he flung it overboard. It spun once, caught the sunrise, and vanished with a quiet splash. Behind them, the Atlantic stretched endless and forgiving. Ahead, the horizon burned gold. Elias dipped the oars again, not running from ghosts, but rowing toward them. The wind rose. The sail filled. The longboat leapt forward like a creature newly born. And somewhere far beyond the sunrise, an island waited, where time stood still and 30 souls still prayed for a captain who had once tied an anchor chain around his own neck, and chose instead to break everyone else's. Type anchor in the comments if you believe some chains are meant to be broken. Next week, the island where the sun never sets and the tide never rises. Subscribe or the coordinates vanish with the next wave.